Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Today is Doctor Who Sunday, and there's some good news. My eyes are almost back to normal, so you can at least see my face again. No more sunnies, and I hope never again on this channel. Now, I hope you all enjoyed the Keep It Positive Doctor Who mystery video that I released the other day, last Thursday, actually. Be sure to check that video out. I know a lot of you have enjoyed it. You let me know in the comments, so thank you very much if you have watched it already. Go and check it out at the end of this video if you've not seen it already. It really is quite a treat. So today we are reviewing the William Hartnell story, The War Machines, as voted by you, the subscribers. If you would actually like to vote on the current poll, then head on over to the community page after this video. There is a poll that is currently running, and I'm just addressing it as such because you could be watching this video much later on in the year and there's going to be a poll on the page. The War Machines was written by Ian Stewart Black, based off a story by Kit Pedler, directed by Michael Ferguson, and its average audience score was 5.2 million for the overnight score. And I want to make that clear because I received some comments the other day. I do base this off the overnight score. By the way, this is not a lowest rated video. It aired from 25th of June to the 16th of July 1966. So the Doctor and Dodo land in London, and the Doctor immediately senses something is very wrong about the Post Office Tower building. He and Dodo go to investigate. It's not long before Dodo's mind is taken over by a mysterious Gestalt type being called the Wotan. The Doctor soon discovers this and puts her into a deep sleep, and she goes off to the countryside, and we don't see her again. The Doctor discovers that the Wotans are creating their own war machines to take over the human race with mind control. These war machines are said to be able to think for themselves. Can the Doctor reverse the situation in time to save the human race with the help of new companions, Polly and Ben? There will be loads of points that I miss out of the review, so please actually do leave your comments below. I will say that when I put this story to the vote, I couldn't remember if I'd seen this or not. I've not actually seen all of the Hartnell stories. Upon watching it, I realized I had actually seen it before, but I just couldn't remember it very well. Now, this is a good story, I will say. It's got a couple of flaws in it, but other than that, it's a pretty well-rounded story that focused on the intelligence of the Doctor. It's also the penultimate story to his final story, The 10th Planet. Now, the one thing about filming back in the 60s was that it would have been quite tricky to get the shots that they get in London, and they actually do get them in this episode. This was an early example of branching out into public to get the B-roll footage, so to speak. They would have had very limited time back in the day to do that. So I actually praise them for being able to make that transition from the indoor to outside very nicely within this episode. I know it's not probably not the first episode where they have done that, but it's just very noticeable in this one. The Doctor, played by William Hartnell, is certainly the clipped, abrupt, and grandfather type of character that we have always seen with him in this. One thing is displayed here is his intelligence. So they land in London and he immediately senses something is off, something is alien about the Post Office Tower building. And when they meet Professor Brett later on, it's very clear that he believes that he has found the source of the issue. And that's just within his acting in general. The only thing I noticed was even though he was actually posing as an expert, it didn't really show him getting into the building that way. He just suddenly appears, and I would have actually liked to have seen the Doctor's infiltration techniques actually applied in this episode. Unless, of course, I'm mistaking it and being absolutely naive because today I believe this is probably the BT Tower building. I think I'm not quite sure, but maybe back in the day you could just walk into the Post Office Tower building, so maybe the security back then wouldn't have been that top notch. His Doctor moment really came in episode 3 where the war machine is approaching the Doctor. Everyone backs off except for him. He does exactly what the Doctor would do, and that was to try and approach, maybe even communicate with the war machine. Because he is able to do this, he can actually activate the machine quite easily and then use it to see what their purpose is and how they could potentially put a stop to the entire thing. Now, of course, that causes Ben to panic because Polly at this point has been taken over, which, by the way, I actually think is some kind of plot hole because they don't really show it happening. Although I think it does actually happen when Dodo is put to sleep by the doctor, but it's really unclear as to when that happens. Now, like I said, Ben panics and the doctor is almost blasé to it. I think why he is blasé to it at this moment in time is because there is a bigger picture going on, and also Polly isn't a companion at that point. So I quite often bring up Ncuti Gatwa's doctor as being irresponsible towards his companions, and Hartnell is the complete opposite. Whilst, he is, as I said, blasé about Polly, he was thinking about the bigger picture, like I just said, in comparison to Dodo. Dodo gets taken over by the Wotan, and whilst he may not notice it straight away, he is extremely concerned when she goes missing at the nightclub, and he insists on remaining there for hours. When she does return, you can clearly see that he is panicked and a little bit angry, so to speak. And later, when he discovers that she's been hypnotized, he takes the priority to remove her from the situation entirely by putting her into a deep sleep and sending her off to the country for a few days for her to not actually return. And on that subject, I really don't like the way that Dodo was written out of the episode, so to speak. In actual fact, I had forgotten that she was not in the 10th Planet episode. I would have liked to have seen her come in at the end and thank the doctor and then leave. Much more polite, because that's how Dodo has always come across to me. There are reasons why they didn't have her back at the end of the last episode. According to Inez Lloyd, her contract had expired midway through the episode, which actually is very poor management if that is the case. It is a really horrible way to actually be written out of Doctor Who altogether. Oh, your contract's expired. Oh, well, you have to go. They could have just done a contract extension for the other two episodes and written her out at the end in a much cleaner way. But, it is what it is. They handled it the way that it was. And I can't imagine that Jackie would have been particularly happy about that. But sometimes actors get treated poorly in those regards, particularly early on in the 60s. There is also the possibility that they decided to continue that way so that the viewer could get used to Ben and Polly before the first regeneration. By that point, there had been several character changeovers of companions, but not with the Doctor. So it would be best to have some faces that the viewer can remain attached to when the Doctor changes. It was a trait actually that was then utilized a lot during the classic era. The companion changeover always happened separately as a before the Doctor changeover, so to speak. One of the more notable ones was Tegan. Perry was introduced a few episodes early, and Tegan was written out a few episodes early before her contract actually expired. Are there any viewers old enough to have seen the changeover in the 10th Planet with the Doctor? Did you know about it in advance, or was it just a surprise twist that nobody knew was actually happening? Now, one thing that strikes me about Polly is that she is an extremely kind companion. She looks after Dodo, changes money for the homeless men, and cheers at Ben when he is down. Ben, on the other hand, is a complete contrast. He has a bit of a quick temper in this episode and was very happy to use his fists in order to defend Polly. He has quite a nice contrast with the Doctor, though, I think. And I think also that is down to the acting ability as well. He's very convincing. Now, one thing I noticed, and this is just an off the cuff remark because it's pretty negligible, so to speak. I noticed that some of the diction sounds off in this episode, and I wondered if that was due to the age of the tape. Admittedly, I wasn't watching perhaps a cleaned up version of this as I was watching it on BBC iPlayer because I was busy at the time of recording. The War Machines, I can see why people really like them. I think they hold a lot of interesting connotations about today's world and the past history, actually. With today's world, we have many a machine that is advanced in technology. The scary thing about that is, whilst the technology is only as good as the creator in many respects, some of the AI robots have shown the ability to say the things that they say off their own back, so to speak. And who's to say that one day they might actually start thinking for themselves too and start taking over the world? I'm such a conspiracy theorist. The war machines are an allegory in many respects for war, and it is a metaphorical way of doing that. That's the whole vibe I get with them anyway. I could be completely wrong. They kind of remind me of a Dalek, and they also look like war tanks, and they're waging war and essentially brainwashing or hypnotizing the human race and offing anyone who opposes them. That's the way I see it anyway. The whole serial actually feels like a World War II movie as well. The 60s were a very popular era for black and white World War II movies as well, and it had been about 10 years since rationing had ended too. It really felt like I was watching a World War II movie actually with this episode. There were smoke effects, fire, rubble, machine guns. It had a very military-esque vibe to it. The one thing that we always ask about the last season of Doctor Who was, where is the money going? Now, of course, we do know that it went on one giant animated dog with a leash who sat on top of the TARDIS for hundreds of years. But it was very clear that the money hadn't been spread across the series well. The new series should really take a leaf out of the book of the old series. Well, they would if they were allowed to focus on it and learn from it. You know what I mean? The war machines very clearly had money spent on them. They were big and practical. They could move around and spray dry ice, I think it probably was. That's no easy feat to achieve because that wouldn't have been cheap to do. They made a smart move. They spent the money on the props that people would be terrified of, a machine that thinks for itself and does whatever it wants to do. We couldn't see the alien, which is why I said it's a kind of gestalt type of being. The alien was an unseen entity, so to speak, so we only knew it as the Wotan. It was the actors playing off the hypnosis to make us believe that the Wotan was extremely powerful, and all that would do was cost them essentially the actors' daily wage and what they would have got at the time. The sets also seem quite intricate as well. They had quite a lot of them. Plus, on top of that, they had a lot of B-roll footage of London. All in all, it's actually a very strong story for the penultimate episode for William Hartnell. Sometimes I wonder if because actors know they are leaving, they give it more of an oomph. And he certainly worked hard in this episode to give it that than perhaps what he normally does. Of course, this may be a story that was right up his alley. He has probably a lot of war experience and knowledge to play off in that and apply it to the character. There you have it. That's what I think. Let me know what you think. Chat about it. Don't shout about it. Vote on the current poll on the community page. Go and check out last Thursday's video. Like and subscribe. And I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.